I think beads on a string designs are great for new quilters. Here I have a quilt that I quilted when I was an early quilter, and you can see that there's not a lot of decisions to make when you're quilting this sort of design. You just go along in a straight line, and whenever you want to, you add something like one of these stars. You can make your beads very close together, or you can make them more farther apart, like on this quilt. And this is really nice if you are kind of wanting this linear feel, a kind of a modern linear feel to your quilting, but you don't want it to be just straight lines. You can do something like this, where it's mostly straight lines, but you're adding a little bit of flair every so often. Here's some other examples of beads on a string. Here the beads are pretty close together. In this design, the beads are farther apart, and there's lines with no beads on them in between the lines with the beads on them. And I'll show you a bit about that later in this lesson. So let's go to the tablet, and I'll draw a basic beads on a string design. You start with a line, in this case downward. You add something, in this case a circle. You go around to the other side, and then you continue a new line down. So a line, make your shape, travel around to the other side, and start a new line. You do that from one edge of your piece all the way to the other. And then what I do when I'm quilting a big piece is then I'll just come up the other direction. But if you're more comfortable just working in one direction, you can do that. You don't have to have your beads arranged in a geometric pattern like on the first quilt I showed you. They can be random, but in this case I'm kind of letting them nestle together. So now let's try stitching some beads on a string designs. This one will be simple, just ovals on a string. I'm going to just come up. So I make my line, I make my shape, and another line. My shape, I come around to the top, and another line. So you can see my circles aren't perfect, and like in pebbling, if you don't hit the line exactly, that's fine. If your thread matches your quilt, a lot of that is going to just kind of disappear into the texture, and as you warm up, your circles will look better and better anyways. Okay, so let's try a different pattern. This one will be the asterisk pattern. Take my line down, make these little triangles that all meet in the center. Right here, I try and make sure there's no triangle in the way of where my line is going to continue. So I'm going to go over to the other side of where that line will be. And start a new line. Make my shape. And start a new line. One of the things I love about free motion quilting is that you get natural variety. It's sort of like writing on your quilt. And so don't worry about little inconsistencies between one shape to the next. They're going to look great all together. So you've seen the asterisks. We'll try a flower. Just like the asterisks, I make sure there's not a petal where I'm going to take the line next. You can make a longer space between your flowers if you want. And you can even make your flowers double. I really like the look of those. And you can come back down. You'll want to just make sure that you leave enough spacing between one column or one row and the next that your motifs won't interfere with each other. So your line, and then any shape you want. And then back so that you can continue your line. Now you don't have to keep your beads spaced out. You can actually squish a bunch of beads together, and I really like the look of that in this pattern. I'm going to use a wavy line now because that's fine too. And I'm going to put a bunch of little pebbles in a row. Come around to the bottom and then continue the line. This has a really elegant and watery feel to it. I'm going to start a new cluster of pebbles. Each pebble ends up rotating in the opposite direction of the first one, which I'm sure you remember from the pebbling lesson. And continue the line. And then imagining you've reached the edge of your piece, just coming back. When I'm doing these long, graceful lines, I let the stitching extend out of where I'm holding my hands in the U shape, and that's fine. I still feel like I have enough control for that. Another cluster. And continuing the line. Let's go down with one more line here. Circle one way, circle the other way. Alternating just like that. For as many pebbles as you like, maybe you just like 3. Maybe you like a whole lot of them. I tend to make the ones at the end a little tinier than the ones in the middle. So you can see that I'm interlocking a lot of my designs, or I'm alternating them, and I want to show you how you can interlock your designs, and that's where beads on a string becomes a really powerful option for you design-wise. Move over here. So I'm going to go up and I'm going to make these little squared off spirals. And I'm definitely not going to worry about whether my lines are totally straight, because it will not matter in the finished texture. So I finished one spiral and I'm going to leave a space for the next one to interlock, so about the same width of the spiral I already made and a little bit extra for the space around that spiral. And I'll do another one. And take my line up, leaving a space. And my spiral working in. Oh, this is a little baby spiral. And now when I come down on the next row, I just let my spirals interlock. Go right into that space. And now I know how far down I need to go. So it's really just that first row that you have to be conscious of that spacing. I think these beads on a string designs are great for new quilters, as I mentioned. They work really anywhere. They just go from one edge of your piece to the other. And so whether it's a small piece like a pillow or a big piece like a big quilt, you can really work them the way you want them to work.